Live from Adam Schefter, Giants All-Pro defensive tackle Dexter Lawrence has requested a trade, and he will not be participating in the team's offseason workout program that opens tomorrow. Lawrence and the Giants have been through 2 off seasons now, attempting to negotiate a contract reflecting his value to the Giants over the last 3 years, but there has not been any progress per sources. And that's where we kick it off. Welcome to NFL Live. Hannah Storm alongside Dan Orlovsky, who is busy making notes about everything he's going to be talking about. Mina Comics and Marcus Spears. He's a writer. You're a writer. You do that all. He's got his notebooks everywhere. All right, so let's get right to it. Lawrence has a couple more years left on his deal. Swaggo, he's set to make up to $20 million this season. He would forfeit about $500,000 if he doesn't take part in these off-season workouts. So what do you make of this news?
It makes sense to me. Dexter Lawrence has been a mainstay on this defense. The defensive tackles around the league that's gotten paid, but more importantly, his agent and Dexter as well has realized what this cap has done as far as skyrocketing. And to be one of the premier D tackles in the league for a team that consistently hasn't been able to compete to get into the playoffs or try to be in that conversation to be a team down the stretch. He's consistently brought a high level of performance to a team. So it's probably looking around the league. It's understanding the business of the league with salary cap, the salary cap exploding basically. So Dexter Lawrence is just one of those guys that wants to be in that number. And I don't blame him at all because he's been very successful at that position and a part of a unit that has really carried the banner for the New York Giants as the leader of that unit.
Yeah, Marcus, I think you hit it exactly when you said he's looking around the league, right? Jordan Davis, who is another defensive tackle, not as good as Dexter Lawrence. Very few people are as good as Dexter Lawrence, still a very good young player. Just got $26 million average per year. Lawrence on his current salary is 12th amongst defensive tackles. He doesn't have guaranteed money left the last final 2 years, and he's 29 years old. So this feels to me a little bit like, I don't know, the Myles Garrett trade request, even maybe less animosity here, insofar as he probably just feels like he needs and deserves a raise. So I suspect New York's going to continue to try to get something done because that's the benefit of having your quarterback on a rookie contract. You can pay other players at premium positions premium money, multiple players, and I think New York's going to try to do that.
Yeah. Joe Shane can't trade him. He has to win. He has to win by November or his job with Harbaugh coming in as the head coach is going to be very much so in jeopardy. I agree with their thoughts. I mean, he's the 11th highest paid defensive tackle going into this season right now, the way it's set. That should not be the case. We know he's much better than the 11th paid or 11th best defensive tackle. I will say this, if there is some legitimacy to it, I could see Green Bay making a call. I could see Chicago making a call. I could see the Kansas City Chiefs making a call. I think it's unlikely. I think you have to if you're the general managers. But this definitely feels much more of a, I'm not getting paid how much I should get paid, and you have to pay me much more money for me to continue to be a New York Giant, as they should.
Yeah, it's funny because, Dan, you started listing teams, and my mind was like, well, maybe every team. I mean, it's harder to find teams that don't need a Dexter. I'll throw one more out there. I think the Chargers would be someone that I would look to make a call. I think they need defensive tackle help. They need pass rush. They need run defense, and he solves all 3 of those problems. But again, I agree with Dan. I do not think this trade happens.
Yeah, listen, culture setter, right? You got to think Harbaugh wants to keep him there. He's a fan favorite. Exactly.
He's had stud defensive tackles as well.
All right, let's go to Harbaugh's former team, shall we? Because the Ravens are the first team to open voluntary workouts, and unlike past years, and he loves Jesus, in case you were wondering. It's right, the day after Easter. Love the fit.
That's a favorite sweatshirt.
Yep.
Amen.
Lamar Jackson, amen is right. He was there in attendance, and they're saying amen to that as well. Derrick Henry was in the house. Whole new regime, obviously, there in Baltimore. And he wasn't the only one. Look who's new. Getting acclimated. Trey Hendrickson in the house. Yeah, you bet he.
Big money Trey.
Big money Trey. I love that, Swaggo. So, listen, it's a whole new era there, right, Dan? New head coach, new OC. How important is it that Lamar showed up? Because he hasn't in the past for these kind of workouts.
Yeah, that's a big deal. I mean, this is the second iteration of his career, you know, because of all the newness you're talking about. The first part of his career has been sensational. Multiple MVPs. He's had a ton of success. He's been one of the, if not the best players in football for multiple years. And to your point, Hannah, he hasn't partaken in all of the offseason activities in the past. And so there was a little bit of a question. I was like, okay, is he going to come? And I love the fact that he's there with Declan Doyle and Jesse Minter. I think the thing that will be interesting is how quickly Lamar learns the offense. You know, this is going to take it some time. If you go to kind of what Caleb Williams went through with not only Ben Johnson, but Declan Doyle's coming over from Chicago, it took Caleb a little bit. Now, obviously, Lamar, a greater accomplished player than Caleb. But that first 7 games, we were waiting on Caleb to take that next step. And then you see the last 10 games, and it took off. It takes a whole offseason to just learn this offense. Learn
the language.
Yeah, the language, the execution. It's also going to be a little bit different than what Lamar's been, at least from a consistency standpoint. So I love the fact that he's there. I also love the fact that all of it's new. The face of their franchise is there. I think it matters.
Yeah, if I'm a Ravens fan, I'm absolutely thrilled. Like, this is the best news of the entire offseason because it not only signals, Lamar's buy-in, but Dan hit it exactly. It signals a willingness that put in the time necessary to make the adjustments here, bringing a new offensive coordinator. And frankly, I'm getting excited thinking about Declan Doyle and this Ravens offense next year. One of the things I think they'll lean into heavily is that under-center play-action game you saw in Chicago, second highest rate of play-action in the NFL. The Ravens were 18th last season in terms of running play-action, and that's despite the fact that Lamar Jackson is maybe the most dangerous play-action passer in the league. I mean, over the last 5 years, he's tied with just Matthew Stafford, the AP per play thrown off of play action, and Jared Goff, who's also, of course, a menace off of play action. Some of that is because the run game is so dominant, but also the way Lamar has grown as a passer. He throws with such touch over the middle of the field. He's able to layer passes to his skill players into the zones created, by play action. So I think there's some potential here for this offense to hit the ground running, and that potential is improved by the fact that Lamar showed up when he did.
It's so refreshing to hear MK and Dan talk football. I've been gone for a while. I'm not going to say anything about X's and O's. Yeah, I'm not saying anything about X's and O's. To me, this is about setting the tone for a new coaching regime and a new offensive coordinator along with Lamar. I went to bat for Lamar this season when a lot of people were very critical of him, and I was going to be very critical of Lamar if he wouldn't have showed up for these offseason workouts because it's necessary. Not only for the X's and O's, but because the owner, Steve Bisciotti, sat up and said, if Lamar wants to be a part of this process, he's going to have to be fully vested. And I think this is the one thing and a seminal moment that lies into this plan that they had in the offseason. Let's not forget, it's exciting to talk about the Ravens. It's exciting to talk about what they potentially could be. But a Hall of Fame coach was fired from this organization, which shed nothing but light on Lamar Jackson and how he moves from that point going forward. So I think it not only says a lot about Lamar and what I've believed about him since day one of him getting into the league, I think it says to everybody else on that football team. And not only Lamar, there's veterans showing up. That blew my mind just now. I knew it because we covered the season all year. Gary rushed for 1,500 yards last year. Yeah. And we talking about that's like an afterthought. This team is still very, very good. They were very, very banged up last year, and I think they're starting off at the right foot, and Lamar is going to be the catalyst for whatever success or failures that they have based on his availability and these guys that's going to follow and rally behind him.
Yeah, losing record, missed the playoffs with a roster that we thought was one of the best in football. We were talking gloriously about them before last season, too. Let's go ahead to the draft, too, and talk about what they could do. They could go a lot of different ways with their 14th overall pick. Both Mel Kiper and Field Yates have them taking offensive lineman Spencer Fano out of Utah. Now, Matt Miller has them taking Oregon tight end Kenyon Sadiq in his latest mock. So, Dan, where do you think they should go with that pick at 14?
Interior of their offensive line needs probably one, if not two starters. When they signed Max, it was like, all right, go get it done. And then Max obviously no longer part of that trade, and their run game wasn't nearly good enough last year. The pass protection for Lamar, not nearly good enough. So as much as I want to fall in love with skill players, I still think improving this offensive line that fell off is a big deal. I'd also say this, they need another pass catcher, though. As much as I love Zay Flowers and Bateman's been a nice player, Mark Andrews is really only like their proven go-to tight end. Smythe is there, but they need another pass catcher. I don't care the tight end or the position.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying about the skill players, but I think for them the dream, you talked about the interior of the offensive line, is if the Penn State guard is somehow there at 14. Venga Ioane, he might not have been there in these drafts. I'd have to go see where he went, but to me, that is a hand-in-glove fit for that Baltimore run game. He is a nasty run blocker, and that's a position where, like center and guard are both issues for them. But I think you can sort of define or reassert your identity on the ground with a draft pick like that. So I would love if the Ravens were able to get him.
And I agree, MK, because we've seen this team at their best when that unit has had continuity. Not all of the greatest players, but the continuity. The other thing, I think Matt Miller is it's interesting that he talks about Sadiq. We saw his combine and how athletic he was, the speed, and you lose Isaiah Likely. So that may be enticing as well. You either go weapons or you go offensive line. We've seen it happen time and time again now in this league. And when we brought up the Ravens and that D tackle came up, I also thought about, what about Dexter Lawrence? Would they call and inquire? But obviously Lamar has to sign an extension. Money going to run pretty low there. But it's just an interesting offseason for the Baltimore Ravens. I think one or two moves can rightfully so put this team right back in that conversation. But they're going to be critical moves. And the protection of Lamar is probably going to take precedence over anything before any other thing gets situated or sorted.
I want the skill position player, but not at the expense of the offensive line.
Okay.
Right.
That has to be the priority in Baltimore. Offensive line early, skill position player second, third, fourth round.
Yeah, he was pressured on 37% of his dropbacks last season. That was second only behind Justin Herbert. All right, we are just getting started on NFL Live. Dan is going virtual.